G'day there. Welcome to the Alpha Wave Trader week ahead. I think it could be a pretty interesting week ahead after the close we saw on Friday in the US. We've had the FOMC meeting last week, which was pretty interesting, seeing a very dovish Fed being met by some late selling from the market, with the S&P closing pretty weak on the day. We saw another rally on the Thursday, and then Friday is when it really turned down hard from a very important zone, an area that I've shown you over the last few months. If you've been watching these updates, you'll know that I've been sort of keeping an eye on where the S&P is going, and we'll see that in a minute. Why I think this selling could accelerate to the downside in the near future. Even this week is a possibility based on the end of quarter arriving this week. And I think there's some pension fund rebalancing that will occur, selling stocks and buying bonds after the huge outperformance of the stock market over the last 3 months. So it is possibly going to be an interesting week. So I thought I'd just recap very quickly what we were discussing last week. I was showing you the VIX, which is the volatility index on the S&P 500, showing you, the short-term volatility of the market. And I was pointing out as prices, sorry about that, that was a mistake, as the price of the VIX headed down below 13, which was where it was last week. I was discussing that as a potentially a good buy. With prices very rarely getting below this 10 to 12 region, and the fact that on the monthly I'd showed you that we were in potentially the early stages of a high volatility period. And just to show you here very quickly to recap, now this is the monthly VIX, and that black line being the 10-month moving average of the VIX, and my sort of line in the sand, you can't see it fully there, but around 16. Once that 10-month moving average on the VIX heads above 16, I'm interested in the potential for a high volatility period in the market that couldn't last for a long time. You've seen there's a few periods here that lasted 8 years. We've got another period here from the crash in 07 to about 2013, and then we went into a low volatility period for most of the last few years, apart from a couple of years there in 15, 16. So we've just seen the monthly moving average on the VIX head above 16 a few months ago, with that huge sell-off that occurred last quarter. And that was sort of the basis for me, keeping an eye on the VIX as it headed lower. And once it got down to that area around 13, I was discussing last week, it was looking pretty compelling to be getting long the VIX, and also based on the technical factors that I'll be showing you in a minute. So that's been a pretty good move in the last week, from 13 to 16.5. If you're long a VIX, that's 3.5 grand US per contract, which is better than a poke in the eye, I guess. And so moving on to other things that I've been talking about recently. This is the monthly of gold, and a while ago I gave you a quick presentation on gold on the monthly. We were talking about key bars. This is of the monthly chart, so this is just the last few months trading. You can see we've had a buy pivot on the monthly a few months ago. Then we had a key bar up on the monthly, and I was showing you calculations. I think gold was up around here when I did the little presentation, and I gave you a couple of levels to watch out for in gold, one of them being 12.89, which was the buy zone of that monthly key bar. And this is just a recap for people who have been watching, so I won't go into the details of the key bars. If you don't know what they are, you'll have to go and watch some past videos. But watching that key bar, and I was saying, the buy zone of that key bar is a spot where you could get a bounce from, and you can see prices end up selling off right into that buy zone and now we're back up at 13.13. I think gave you a couple of levels, where prices could get to, but ultimately prices just hit that first level where good strong buying support was, and lifted to the upside. So gold's still looking pretty strong, but it does need to head above that 1380 to 1400 region to get really excited about what gold can do. And if markets do sell off strongly from here, there is a potential that gold could really bust out to the upside. And moving on to the E-mini S&P 500 futures after the very big sell-off on Friday night. Just to look at the big picture, for those who have been following along for the last few months, they would know this chart, but for the new people, this is the quarterly chart, so every bar is 3 months trading. And this chart goes back to 1997, so we've got over 20 years trading here, and I'm looking at the sell pivots most importantly. So just following along with as prices go higher in each quarter, and looking at the low of the highest bar, and so that's the new high there, and we're just following along and waiting for prices to close below the low of that highest bar. So there's the highest bar, looking at the low of that. Once you have a close below that, we have the first sell pivot, and then we're watching what prices do after that sell pivot occurs, and from there you can see we had the crash. On the second one, there's another sell pivot, and we've got prices rallying after the sell pivot, and then we had the crash. Third one here, which was a false signal, but then it turned back up, and you can see there's the buy pivot there because it closed above the high of the lowest price candle. So the buy pivot there, and then off it went to the upside. Sell pivot here, and we got a big rally in the next quarter, you can see, up to the top of that sell pivot candle, and then it sold off again all the way to retest the low of that sell pivot candle. So that's quite a big sell-off before turning back up again. And we had the buy pivot there. There's your buy pivot candle there, and then the big rally. And now we can see right now this is the fifth sell pivot candle that occurred in the December quarter. So we have that candle there being the sell pivot candle, and prices are currently up in the sell zone of that candle. And look at the exact high before prices plummeted, and pretty much to the point. The high in prices last week was the exact top of the sell zone of that quarterly sell pivot candle. That is the spot where I'm most interested in getting short for a potential move, at least back to the midpoint of that candle, which would be at 26.50. From there it can go to the buy zone, which would be down around that 24.50 to 2500 zone. And even just a retest of the low, as we saw on this fourth one, a retest of the low of the candle would see prices all the way back to those December lows, which is over 16% below where we are now. And I tell you what, if prices can't hold that level, it's a very quick trip back to the buy zone of this whole wave to the upside, which is down around 2100. That would be a 700 point fall in the S&P, which would be pretty huge. But when you look at the first two instances where we saw the sell pivot, that was a precursor to two very large sell-offs. So as far as I'm concerned. That's pretty interesting price action, and very interested in what happens this week with prices, with the market heading into the end of the March quarter, and so many factors at play now, saying that prices could sell off, especially the blackout window that's coming. S&P 500 companies can't buy back their stock as they have been so aggressively just for the next month, heading into results that are coming up. And that means that a large amount of buying support will not be there over this next month. So if there is a sharp sell-off, it may not have the buying support that we would expect it to see. So let's see what happens this week. But everything is now pretty much in place from what I've been saying for months. And there is just a very good chance that we could see at least a quick, sharp move back to this midpoint around 26.50. And look, from there, who knows? If it does have a huge rally or a big sell-off, we don't know. And but if you can just set yourself up on a sharp move to this 26.50 in a strong position where you could make money either way, that's not a bad outcome. And that is what I'm trying to do for my clients at Alpha Wave Trader. So let's see what happens this week. Could be an interesting one. Cheers.